We're gonna end this video right now, and I'm gonna start working on this thing again. So, and then we'll film it for another video because this is gonna be way too long.
Legend, cracks on a Pro Tools setup to set it off. Have to crack, get the ski mask treatment, I kill it all. I forgot him, see, thanking me Jesus, I come across, get crucified by euphemisms and metaphors. Ain't no antidotes for antidotes, poisonous bars or acid fat spilled on your pigment and melted off. Cuban links from that red
you gotta be fucking.
What applause if you ain't good for that. I'll snatch it right off of your neck.
All that time for 2 volts. You got to be shitting me. Alright, so right now what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be sticking on the gasket for the new manifold. I'm gonna be placing the manifold on, bolting the wastegate on. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be putting on the wastegate on right now. And then we're gonna plumb all the stuff for the turbo. I don't think we're gonna quite bolt the turbo on today, but the manifold on for sure right now. So that's what we're gonna get doing right now. I'm gonna merge you guys in 3, 2, 1.
223s like my olive nines. Get your feet up.
Get all the way.
You're fucking with a legend right now.
We're gonna send it. Probably clean up all the oil down there too. That would be nice.
Riches equal bitches, and riches equal fame, and fame to say my name. No Destiny Child, but a Destiny Child is making my own lane. It's talent over hype, get it right, you gotta be precise. She in that V, I looking right in front of the beat tonight. Do it like you doing if it's Snapchat. Do it like you doing if it's Snapchat. Your Skype, Instagram, and your Twitter, ho. I got a couple bands, let me see you dip below.
This is the side that you need to build your exhaust for. This is the side that you need to get open. And put everything in. You have to compress this. See? Right now I have the manifold bolted back on. I have the turbo placed in with a couple of bolts, and the wastegate is on. So we're making some progress. This is coming along. All we got to do is plumb the lines for the turbo, put the gaskets on it, bolt it up. She's ready to go. I'm way too hyped right now. I'm gonna turn you guys around and show you what she's looking like. Ooh, baby. Oh my god. You looking good. So, like, I told you guys I was going for the stock look. Okay, I'm going for as stock as I can. And the thing that I'm really liking is the turbo right here. If I get like a stock pipe from like a Chevy or something that's got a big ass intake manifold that I can get to angle down right here, I can modify this stock air housing, and I can literally use the stock air housing and build some intake down here that sucks up some cold air and stuff like that. The only thing that's not really looking stock is obviously if you take a little peek back there, you have a nice chrome wastegate. But I think the exhaust is obviously, it has these V-band clamps right here. Once we, I gotta paint that black, and once that comes down, I think it's gonna be all right. This is looking as stock as you can. Like, I guess to like the untrained eye, like it kind of looks stock, maybe not. But when all this gets covered, the chrome part gets covered, you know the deal. It'll look better. It'll be harder to tell.
Day 2.
It's day 500. We've been working on this thing. I'm on my final breath. I don't think I can do anymore. No, but I don't remember where we last left off, okay? I really don't. This has been it's been a few days to say the least. Well, really, it's been 2 days of me working on this thing. I just haven't done it in a few days because I've been at work and stuff like that, and my garage door broke, so couldn't open my garage. So now what I'm going to be doing is we're gonna kind of clock the turbo. I know the turbo needs to move for sure because there are things in the way, like it's in the way of the power steering pump. I don't know how we're gonna move it back if that continues to be a problem. As well as I'm gonna get all the lines and fittings put on the turbo, and we're gonna start making some progress. As soon as we plumb up the turbo, that's like what we're doing right now, plumbing the turbo. After we're done doing that, we can bolt everything up, put all the gaskets on, route the rest of the intercooler piping, and then all we have to do after that is build the exhaust. build the exhaust and get it tuned. We also have to put in the fuel pump too. We'll do that. I don't know what we're gonna do.
Oh, look at that. Does she not look pretty? Woo! Baby.
So right now, what I'm doing is I'm putting back on this power steering pump. Cake.
Day 3.
Day, who knows what? I don't know what day it is. Sorry, we have this lens on here. I was shooting pictures. I forgot to change the lens right now. My hands are super dirty, so we're just gonna roll with this for right now. It's right now I have all these lines. I don't know if I'm gonna use this or if I'm gonna go get a braided steel line made for my oil return right now. But I got all the lines over here. These are the coolant lines. This one right here, as well as oh, you can't see it. Where did it go? Oh, right here. These two lines right here are the coolant lines, coolant return and feed. The oil drain, obviously, or oil feed line they provide for you. So yeah, everything's back on. Power steering pump is back on. Everything. Yeah, I honestly don't even know where I left you guys off last time, but hey. So I'm getting underneath the car right now. I'm gonna pull out the old banjo bolt for the old oil return line. You have to do our oil feed line, I'm sorry, and then pull out the old oil sensor. Yeah, oil pressure sensor. I gotta take that off, and you have to use like this little fitting that they provide for you. There's a lot of stuff with this kit. I'm gonna say this right now. They provide this as a bolt-on kit. There's a lot of things they don't provide for you. As a bolt-on kit, they don't supply you the bolts to bolt in the turbo. They don't supply you the bolts to bolt on the flange that they manufacture to the back of the exhaust housing to bolt the exhaust that they provide on. Like, they literally don't provide the bolts for that. They don't provide an oil return line. They don't provide any of the coolant lines. None of that. And the new banjo bolts are a little bit different sizing, so you have to kind of find a hose in between that fits both of them. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'll explain more of this when I'm done. At this point, I have stopped using the GoPro, and I'm just trying to get this back together. This is not the easiest thing in the world to do. They make I feel like it's made. It seems like it's a kit that you can just buy and you could slap it on. It's not. It's not. There's a lot of things that go into it that you need to continue to purchase to make sure that this works, as well as there's a lot of like the placement of some of these things, like the oil return line is going to need an excessive amount of heat wrap and work to make sure that that thing doesn't melt. That's why I think I might just say fuck it and go get a braided steel line, because I really don't want to deal with all that. Let's see. What's side? Alright, so, and I just got back from the store right now. I know the last place that I left you guys off saying I was going to do more stuff, I did. I got all the coolant lines and everything lined up, and I decided just the way that the fitting that they provide for you from CX Racing to put onto this turbo is one for a rubber hose like the OEM line. Now, where that puts it out in location to the manifold and to the exhaust and all these other things that are super hot, there's no way around it. No matter what you're gonna use, the heat shield, the whatever you use, it's gonna melt that hose. So I had to custom fabricate a stainless steel and fitting line. Had to go get this done, which is expensive, but you gotta do it. There's a lot of things to this kit that aren't provided, or extra work that you have to do in order to do this. I really feel like they should provide an AN fitting oil return line, since they provide one for your feed line. Doesn't make any other sense to me, but yeah, I'll show you guys all the other work that you have to do. I'll go over that after I do that, because you have to take your old oil return or your old oil feed line, you have to take that out and you have to plug it with just another bolt, and I'll give you guys all the bolt sizings and everything. I'll have the link in the description of everything that you need to get, just because it's so much. And you need to replace that with a T fitting kind of that they give you. It's got 4 fittings on it, but you go into your oil sensor line hole, you take the oil pressure sensor out, you put that fitting in there. That fitting then branches off and does your oil feed line as well as your oil pressure sensor, and then the other one they give you a block off bolt to block off the other hole. Other than that, yeah, that's also hard to put in, but yeah, I'll tell you guys later.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
The time has come. The time has come for the Genesis to start. This bolt right here, that's gonna thread into the old oil feed line hole. This bolt, for whatever reason, is a special thread where I could not find a bolt. I've been to like 3 different auto parts store, Home Depot, Lowe's, everywhere, could not find it. I had to go down to a special like aircraft and racing shop to get a bolt and fitting made to fit that hole. I finally have it. I'm gonna go put it in that oil feed line hole. I'm gonna fill this thing with oil, and we're gonna start this bitch. So without further ado, let's jack up this car. Let's get this oil bung fitting thing, whatever this is, plugged in that hole. Let's fill this with oil and let's start her up. I know I seem not very excited right now. I'll be excited as soon as this thing threads into the block, because if it doesn't, then we're back to square one.
Got some bonus footage of you looking all buff and manly right now too. Yum. Hello, YouTube.
Let me know if it starts leaking or if I need to shut it off, right? We have the turbo on. You guys watched the first start. I've been driving it for a couple of days. The car is not tuned yet, but I've been driving it doing like test runs and everything like that just to make sure that there's no overheating issues, there's no leaking, there's nothing. Dyno day is tomorrow on Monday. But today what I'm going to be going over, I'm going to cut these video series here of installation. I'm going to go over everything with you guys that I had issues with installation. There were a lot of things that I had issues with for installation. Now I'm going to go over a couple of them right here. The first off, you see that fitting right there that goes right above your oil filter? Now that's where your oil pressure sensor used to go. It's a little T fitting. It has 4 holes on it, and in those 4 holes you now run your new oil feed line as well as your oil pressure sensor, and on the bottom there's a little block off bolt. I don't know if you guys can see that in between there. You see this how big that fitting is? Now the oil filter housing has a nice fat cap on it, so that fitting cannot feed in there all the way without hitting it. So I don't know if you guys can see on the back side of there's like a stack of like 5 washers, so that I can space that thing out enough so that I can thread it in and have it not be loose and leak oil. Not only that, on the side over here, do you guys see that little blue cap right here? That little blue cap is a block off cap because I had to get an AN fitting that would thread into that hole. Now right there, what's originally there is your oil feed line that goes to your stock turbo. Now because it's repurposed by this whole T-fitting that they provide you, there's now a hole right here that goes right above your oil filter line. They do not provide you a bolt hole or a bolt for that to plug that hole. And I literally, for the life of me, I went to like 4 or 5 different auto parts stores, and I could not get a bolt that fit in that thread pitch. I went to everywhere you could think of, and I had to go to this place, I think it was called J&G Aircraft Fittings, and I had to get a special bolt made to fit in there so that I can obviously not just dump out oil from that hole. Now, why I had such a big issue with that, because it's really time consuming trying to find that bolt. Like I said, I went all over. I went to a bunch of different auto parts stores, AutoZone, Napa, O'Reilly's, a bunch of different places. I went to like an Ace Hardware. I couldn't find a bolt that I needed to thread in there. And then like that's time out of your day, as well as that's pretty annoying that they couldn't just provide a bolt. I mean, they're repurposing that hole anyways. They might as well provide a bolt. Another issue with bolts, we're going to move to the back of the turbo housing, as well as bolting the turbo to the manifold. They do not provide the bolts to bolt the turbo to the manifold. They do not provide the bolts on the back of the turbo housing to connect the exhaust. Now, what I mean by that is right here. You see this little flange right here? This is an external flange. It has, you could see the gasket in between it that they provide, this flange that they provide to get this V-band and this exhaust on. Now these 4 bolts that hold that on there, they don't provide that. And that threads into the back of the turbo. As well as the 4 bolts right here that bolt the turbo to the manifold, they don't provide those either. So you gotta go find 1, bolts that are strong enough, 2, bolts that are gonna resist heat, because it's a turbo. It's going to get extremely hot. It's on a manifold, so you need to get bolts that are going to be able to resist that and not break. Which it's also annoying because like the manifold itself is threaded. Like if they're going to go out of their way to thread the manifold so that those bolts can go in there, they might as well provide 4 or 8 extra bolts, right? 8 extra bolts to just bolt that thing on there. They provide all the gasketing, everything. Like, geez. Also, in the turbo range, underneath the turbo, I showed you guys the oil return line. You guys kind of saw a glimpse of that when I showed you my line. Now that line, you see that hose that's underneath there? Now if I zoom out real quick for you guys, you can see like that line, that stainless steel line right there, goes right in between the turbo exhaust housing, and right here, because I painted my manifold black, you can't really see it, but the manifold itself is right here as well. Like, do you see how close that is to the line? If you were to run a rubber line on there, it's gonna melt. As well as these banjo bolts right here on the side for the coolant, which you also have to get special lines for. These banjo bolts aren't the same diameter as your stock ones. They're pretty close, but no cigar. So you have to get custom lines that kind of fit over both of these, which is kind of a pain. I had to go down again to a Hose-Man, and I had to go get that made, as well as I had to go to Hose-Man to get that stainless steel and fitting line. These banjo bolts also, I needed to bend them a little bit differently, because any position that I put them way, these rubber lines too close to the manifold, so I had to bend them and get them up away from there. As we continue on our journey of the list of things that I wasn't a fan of from this kit, they provide everything like intercooler piping. The intercooler piping, I'm not going to say it was a great fit. It's not. It worked. I didn't need to do any extra cutting or welding to fit the intercooler piping in there. But it does not fit perfectly. You can make it work, but just heads up, it doesn't fit perfectly. You're going to have to wiggle, twist, and find your way to get that thing to fit. Out of all the piping that they provide, they don't give you an intake. So you gotta either get yourself a filter or find something to go over the turbo. Like, I guess that's not that big of a deal, but I mean, things like that you're gonna repurpose over here, like this, I mean, at least provide a $2 freaking vacuum cap for the lines that you're not gonna be using anymore. As well as like all these lines right here. Some of this is electrical, some of this is like vacuum hosing, and here's like all the boost regulation stuff. As you can see, I have stuff zip tied up here. A lot of that had to be moved because, I don't know if you can see, the turbo sits like half a centimeter away from this bracket, and all these lines used to be back down here. Now, again, with how hot the turbo is going to get, that's all going to melt, so I relocated it to the front and
did all that.
So I just want to give you guys my honest review and my honest experience with this kit. So if you guys are wanting to purchase this, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. You're not going to be able to buy it and just slap it on. You're going to have to go get other things to make this run. Now, I'm not talking poorly to CX Racing. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they provide in this kit that I had no issues with, that were actually, like, a lot better quality than I had expected. Now, we'll see quality-wise how everything performs on the dyno on Monday, but as of right now, installation-wise, that's everything that I had issues with. The intercooler piping doesn't fit exactly. You can make it work, not the biggest deal. You don't even really have to struggle that hard. You just have to kind of twist things around to figure out what kind of position you need to get them into. The biggest things that I had issues with were right next to the oil filter. That fitting, the copper fitting that they provide, that brass fitting, or whatever that fitting is, that they provide, where it tees off your oil pressure sensor in your brand new oil feed line. When they repurpose that hole for both the new feed line and the oil pressure sensor, they leave a hole on the side of that block that's open from where the previous oil feed line was. They don't provide you a bolt to fit that, and it's like a special thread for that banjo bolt. So that was kind of annoying to try and go find. Like I said, I spent a couple hours trying to go find a bolt that would actually fit in there. Another thing is finding bolts that fit the manifold and the exhaust housing, which is like, that's 8 bolts. They thread both of those, they manufacture both of those, they go through the time and effort to make those things. How much does it actually take to get the 8 bolts that can actually bolt it together? Because at that point, it's not really a bolt-on kit. You gotta go buy the bolts to go get to put it on. They provide all the gaskets and everything. Like, I mean, I had no issues with that. It's like, just put the bolts in there. Jesus, 8 bolts. Because I don't know wherever you guys are, I don't know where you guys live, but I didn't have access to a lot of these bolts. I had to do a lot of searching around to find bolts that would thread into this and that would work, that aren't gonna snap because they don't have the proper torque rating or heat rating, or like aren't, 8 grade or whatever they're rated for cars. Yeah, and then trying to figure out all the solutions with the intake and blocking off all the vacuum parts. Huge flaw that I see with this kit, that they give you an oil return line that is meant to be used with a rubber hose, because there's no way with all the heat shielding and thermal jackets that you could put on a rubber hose, it's eventually going to fail. It literally sits right in between the manifold and between the exhaust housing of the turbo, which obviously you guys know get extremely hot, and rubber with heat is going to melt. Now, the last thing that you want to happen is have your oil return line fail. Not only are you going to lose oil pressure, you're going to lose oil, and when you lose oil right next to something that's really hot and it dumps all over the manifold, you get fire. So it's potentially a really dangerous situation. So I do not suggest at all running a rubber hose. I suggest, it's a necessity in my opinion to get a braided stainless steel line for your oil return. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts, that needs to happen. So all my fueling, my fuel pump, my fuel injectors, and my flex fuel sensor, I'm installing all that today because dyno is tomorrow. I'll be filming that all for a separate video. So this is the end of this video. This is, like I said, just all installation. If you guys found this helpful, smash that like button, comment down below, tell me what you think, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you need more clarity on. Other than that, I'm going to catch you guys in the next video. I need to start working on this thing. Like I said, dyno is tomorrow. This thing needs to be set and ready for tomorrow. Thank you guys so much. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm out.